Nowhere that we go is a one-way street. Nothing that we love is a one-day key. And if we gon' do it, we gon' do this now. And if we say we gon' hold this down. Nowhere that we.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Will Holdren. I am the host of the Will Power Podcast. Today, we have an amazing guest, and his name is Matt Haycox. And Matt is actually an entrepreneur, and he started quite young. On top of that, he actually became the UK's biggest strip club owner by the age of 27, which is very impressive. Now, it may seem like he was on top of the world, but by 28, he actually went bankrupt. But then after that, he rebuilt his whole life, and he has gone into lending, and now he's also an investor. And he has provided over 500 million euros to UK businesses, which is an amazing accomplishment. So with that being said, Matt, thank you so much for joining me today.
No worries, Will. Thanks for having me, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Of course, my pleasure. I'm excited for this interview and to kind of jump into your story. And so to start off, I kind of want to go into your childhood a little bit. So can you kind of touch on what that was like and how that helped turn you into, who you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to be in business as a kid. I think for a couple of reasons really. I mean, look, it was an area of interest, but it was probably an area of interest because my dad was an entrepreneur. He had his own business, and also back, I mean, we're talking about the kind of late 80s, early 90s here as well. I always knew I wanted to be rich. I didn't particularly know how. I just knew I wanted to have a lot of money. And if you kind of go back to that kind of era, it was very much the thought process that the only way to make big money was to own your own business. There was no other real ways that that people became, let's say, a millionaire, so I didn't know what I wanted to do in business. I just knew I wanted to have my own businesses, or my own business at least. So I mean, my kind of early teens, mid-teens was spent, reading every business book I could get my hands on, buying every product I could to try and sell at the market, ordering any get-rich-quick scheme I could come across. I mean, like you guys in America probably call them infomercials nowadays, but I mean, but back in the early 90s, mid 90s, we had paper magazines where they would be set almost like a Craigslist in paper, really. You get to the back of this magazine, and there'd be little coupons. You could send a stamped addressed envelope to be able to buy some business scheme or some new business plan that for like $50 was going to make you a gazillionaire. Yeah. So I really did try and kind of get my hands on absolutely everything I could, and then finally got my proper start in business in kind of 1998, 1999 when I was 18 or 19, and it was a kind of a family business that my dad had invested in after he'd sold his business and retired, and that's when my proper working journey really began.
That's amazing. Yeah. And it's awesome you had parents who were also into entrepreneurship and kind of fueled you into that direction. So I'm kind of curious, was the family business, was that the strip club that you got involved in later, or is that
No. My mum wasn't a stripper. No, that was something I did all by myself. No, so it wasn't my family business. It was a family business that had been around for a long time, and my dad invested in it. That was a business that made uniforms and career wear. So for security guards, bus drivers, doctors, nurses, that kind of thing. That was a business that he invested in. I went there to work. I wanted to avoid university at the time. Not because I didn't have a big issue with university. It was just that I felt that for me it was going to hold me back 3 or 4 years of wanting to get out in the big wide world and have a play at business and make my millions. So but also at that time, I guess it was an era when if you didn't have a college degree, you would probably you would certainly find it very difficult to get a job in a corporate market, and I guess also from a parenting point of view, your kids were probably thought of as failures if they'd had the opportunity to go to university and never took it. So it was and we're talking 20 plus years ago, so it was a very different time back then. But I never wanted to go, like I say, so I started to work in this business initially in sales. The business was mismanaged on a astronomical scale. I mean, there was no customers who really wanted to deal with us. There was no suppliers who wanted to supply us. There was, the bank didn't want to fund us. I mean, everything was a catastrophe. And I kind of used to go home complaining to my dad every day that these guys are screwing you. You're getting robbed. You've got to come back to work and do something about this. And he kind of retired. He wasn't really bothered for it. And I guess ultimately gave me the reins to crack on as I saw fit. And I always say it wasn't that I really knew what I was doing. I just knew everything that probably shouldn't be being done. And for me, it was a baptism by fire. But I guess the business of trial and error. And we over the 3 or 4 years that I was in there, we went from probably a £300,000 loss to ultimately a £30,000 profit, which wasn't that it was a big number, but it was just for me it was the learning curve and the magnitude of problems and I guess negative experiences that I got to deal with. I mean, obviously I didn't understand it or appreciate it at the time back then, but back to where we are today, I always very much say that you only really learn anything when things go wrong. When things go right, they just go right. You can pretend that you're clever and you know why they've gone right, but the reality is when something's gone wrong, you can look back at it and dissect it and break it down and see what you can do to make things better. So I was thrown in at the deep end with every possible thing that could go wrong, and obviously it probably didn't feel like it at the time, but in my future it was one of the best early business educations I could possibly ask for.
No, 100%. And, kudos for you for deciding on not doing college. Like you said, 20 years ago, that's a bigger decision than it is nowadays, right? I think a lot of kids nowadays aren't going down that route, but 20 years ago, that was really, unheard of for that. But it's awesome you got that business experience. And like I said, I think that's probably a better college experience for you going through those couple of years or building out the business. Like you said, taking it from a loss to a profit. And even though the profit wasn't huge, it's definitely a big turnaround, right? Especially for someone as young as you, kind of, running things on your own, which is very impressive. And so with that being said, I mean, what were some of the biggest things you learned from that early on business experience that you kind of took with you for the rest of your life?
I guess I'm probably better off giving you a bit more story of where I went to, just because I think when it comes to learning experiences, I think I probably started to learn a lot more as time went on. I mean, I guess probably the only thing I can tell you I learned from then is how little I actually knew about anything, which was kind of funny to me, because obviously I went into it probably thinking I knew a lot, as so many business owners do nowadays. We think, because we're in business, that makes us a business owner, therefore we know everything. I've read lots of business books, therefore I know everything there is to know about business. And one of my let's say pet hates or criticisms of people in business is that because there's no barrier to entry to get into business, and because there's no league or kind of scorecard per se, it gives people the ability to really delude themselves or trick others with their ability. And like the analogy I would always give is in football or in soccer. If you start playing soccer, and you start playing tomorrow or you start playing next week, you would never possibly say that qualifies you to be able to go and play for Manchester United and compete in those ranks. I mean, hell, it wouldn't even qualify you to be able to really compete in a crappy league on a Sunday afternoon. And everybody knows that, and there's no, I guess, let's say there's no shame, there's no embarrassment. But when it comes to business, it seems to be very binary. I'm either not in business or I am in business. If I am in business, well, then I'm a business owner. Therefore, I sit alongside every other business owner out there. Whether that's someone with 2 minutes experience or 25 years experience. Whether someone's covered in scars or made billions of pounds. So I guess I probably went into that business. I'm not going to say I think I knew everything, but certainly thinking I knew a lot, because I'd had 7 or 8 years of trying to absorb the theory of the books, and I guess being around my dad when he had his business, etc. So I went through the 3 or 4 years learning realizing I knew nothing, but then when I came out of the end, I then thought again, oh, I know absolutely everything there is to know now because I've suffered all these problems. And then when I started the next chapter of my life, which was in the leisure industry, which was with the strip club and building that strip club empire, I really realised again very quickly how little I actually knew, because there are so many different facets of business. Whether it's the sales or the marketing or the operations or the finance or dealing with the properties, dealing with the lawyers, whatever it may be. It was all new stuff to me. And although I'd been so exposed to so many things in the previous 3 or 4 years, I felt almost completely back to ground zero. I guess that was probably my biggest learning from there. And that's just something I'd say to anyone nowadays is to really cut your ego out of it when it comes to being in business. And look, if you've been involved in business for 6 months or 12 months, then you wouldn't then realize that as a 6-month experienced business owner compared to, say, a 25-year experienced business owner. That analogy is someone who's played football for 6 months to someone who's played football for 25 years. You would very clearly know you're in different leagues, and accept that you've got so much to learn. Surround yourself with the people that you can absorb that knowledge from, and just have the humility and the lack of arrogance to make sure you can try and have a smoother path as possible.
Yeah. No, I think those are all really great points. I love what you said about your ego too, because I think a lot of business owners come into it with a huge ego, just like you're talking about, thinking that they can just do everything on their own. They don't need to reach out to other people for help. When reality is there's a lot of mentors out there that can help you out with that. And if you can put your ego aside and kind of reach out to them, say, hey, can you just help me, put me in the right direction with this guy, or even hire a mentor, then that can really change your business. Because I think a lot of businesses can go down in flames, right? When their egos are too high, they don't seek out help, and then they think they know it all. And then, a couple of years down the road, it's going to go down in failure. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
I think kind of tied in with that ego as well is the people that get into business for the wrong reasons. What is to a business owner utterly ludicrous comments like that they want to be their own boss and answer to no one, that they want to have more time to do the things they love, or that they, okay, obviously you do it because you want to make more money, but the reality of most small business owners, of most startup entrepreneurs, is you're working longer hours than you would be in a corporate job. You're earning less money. I mean, when you say you want to be your own boss, the reality is we all answer to somebody, whether we're answering to our customers, whether we're answering to our shareholders, our investors, our banks. We're never truly our own boss. I know it's probably doesn't feel like a hardship for him if you are Elon Musk. But I was having a conversation with someone recently over here in Dubai who raises a lot of money for big let's say international corporate deals, and this guy was involved when Elon's been looking for some investment recently. I can't remember if it was SpaceX or one of his other projects, and these guys who are basically a massive sovereign wealth fund didn't want to be a part of the deal because he felt that Elon had kind of gone too far with his purchase of Twitter, and that he'd kind of crossed the line from probably public asset to public liability. Huh. And I'm sure most people are listening to that thinking, well, who gives a shit? Elon's got so much money. What does it really matter? But I just want to tell the story as an example of the fact that ultimately, however big you are in business, at some point in time, we all want something from somebody. We all have to answer to somebody, and to go into it thinking that you're your own boss, you're going to work no hours, you're going to make a load of money, and you're gonna tell everyone how it is. You're kidding yourselves.
Exactly. Yeah, I like to say this a lot. You're really trading your 9 for 5 for a 24/7, right? So that's really like a business owner is a lifestyle. Like it's your whole life. So that's a major difference. But like you said, there's big payouts too, right? If you do it right, and then 10 years down the road, there's a huge payout that you won't get in your 9 to 5 job. So back into your journey a little bit. You said you were with this family business for a little bit, and then you kind of left that and you wanted to join the leisure sector, such as like the strip club empire. So first of all, what made you want to switch into the strip club section, right? And then how'd that go for you?
Well, when just before the strip clubs, I started a couple of normal bars, or I opened a couple of normal bars and pubs, and I guess I didn't get into the industry for any bigger or more complicated reason that as a 21, 22-year-old guy, you think, oh, well, I can own a bar, I can make a load of money, I can drink beer all night and meet girls and get paid for it. So, really, that was my sole business plan and my sole qualification for trying to do it. I obviously started to realize what did and didn't work in the leisure industry when I had the original bars and clubs. And that's what then stepped me onto the strip club business. And the reason I wanted to get into the strip clubs was because I felt that by having the bar and pub, the bars and pubs, we didn't have enough streams of income. We didn't have a high enough margin. We had a lot more competition, and I used to spend most of my free time back then in the local strip club in the town in Leeds where I lived. So I got to know the managers, got to know the girls, and I guess because I kind of understood the business model from a customer's perspective. Again, I decided that qualified me to be able to go and start in that industry. And again, I was probably 23, 24 at that point, thought what can possibly be better than owning bars, which are now strip clubs, and as well as drinking beer and meeting girls. I'm the boss of a gaggle of strippers. So I did have I had a slightly more planned out, let's say, game plan for the business of why I was going to make us a better strip club than other people, of why why someone would choose our venues over someone else's. But I was still very much winging it. I didn't have the right financing in place, other than poaching the manager from the other club and thinking that because I knew a load of these girls socially, they'd come and work for me. I didn't really know anything about the business, so it was very much again another baptism by fire and learning on the job.
Yeah, no, that is super cool, and I love what you said about how you're kind of winging it, right? Like you had some ideas in place, but at the end of the day, you don't know every calculated step. You don't know how everything's really going to turn out. And a lot of people nowadays, they have analysis paralysis, right? They need to have every step figured out, every single number figured out before they jump into it. And so I'm kind of curious, like from your perspective, like, is there a way you can know every step like that? Or do you have to sometimes go out there and wing it and just say like, just got to have faith?
You know what? Listen, I'm trying to choose my words carefully because I don't want people to get too, let's say, excited about being able to wing it and go out there and achieve anything. But look, when it comes to planning and forecasting, I in my own businesses now, in businesses that I look to fund, I rarely look further ahead than 6 months time, because I think when it comes to projecting anything further than that, you're either guessing at best or in reality talking bullshit to try and impress a bank or an investor. So I think as time goes on, you're going to be winging it. I think you've got to have a base level of knowledge. You've got to have a strong plan in place. You've got to know where your sales are coming from, know what your marketing channels are, know who your people are, know how you're going to finance it, and know what the economics and the KPIs of that business looks like. But really, when you open the doors or when you pick up the telephone in a morning in a business, you don't know how your chips are going to fall that day. You don't know what problems you're going to have to deal with, and how it's going to play out. So I think no matter how long you've been in any business game, it's a lot of let's say common sense, intuition, and winging it. But that is normally winging it built on top of a solid business education and a plan and logic. So I think to be really successful, you've probably got to be a nice mix of the two. That you've got to be structured and disciplined and thought out enough to have a clear plan in place, but entrepreneurial and flexible enough to kind of roll with the punches.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said. Like you can't know everything, but you need to have that base level understanding, like how you're going to move forward with the business. And so obviously you did quite well, right, with the strip clubs, because you had the biggest one in the UK by the time you were 27 years old, which is such an amazing accomplishment. And then you went bankrupt. So I'm curious, like what happened at that point in your life? Like how did the bankruptcy happen? Like when you hit rock bottom, like, what was that like for you?
I guess chapter 2.5, chapter 3 for me was opening that first strip club, which then really led me on a journey of being introduced to a finance broker who helped me raise some money. And I then really learned how to raise money and then use that money to fund growth of the businesses I had, other business projects, other business ideas. So over the course of about 5 or 6 years, from 2002 to 2008, I started the first strip club, ended up with 11. That I was the biggest operator in the UK, as you say. I had about 65 other pubs. I had restaurants. I had retail stores, property portfolio. A kind of a wild array of businesses. I guess I was earning well, I was spending well. I felt, as 26, 27, 28, kind of king ding-a-ling. But really it was all a business built on a massive debt. We were over leveraged, we were undercapitalized. But we were also able to completely, when I say mask it, I don't mean, let's say, mask it from the outside world, but kid ourselves as well. I mean, listen, you're far too young to remember what I'm talking about, but I'm sure you've read about it in the books. But the early part of 2000 was a time of very, very easy availability of capital. I almost used to pride myself on back then on being able to go and find a nightclub that I wanted to buy. I'd go and look at it at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'd make a couple of phone calls at 11 o'clock in the morning, and there'd be someone around my office the next day with the paperwork to sign and the money in my bank ready to do the deal. And that's really what the economic climate was like back then. But obviously, all I was doing was building up a pregnant mass of debt that ultimately one day was going to come home to roost. And July 2008, it was the onset of what was the credit crunch of that era. Liquidity dried up. My funders stopped being able to lend me any money. The fact we couldn't borrow anymore then started to put pressure on the rest of our operations, and very much, almost overnight. I mean, people always say, well, how did it really go wrong that quickly? And it really was, in 4, 5, 6 weeks. I mean, I remember in June 2008, I still had a 999 credit rating. I was still borrowing 7 figures of money. That was in kind of June. July, things were tightening up. August, we were starting to get, let's say, our first very aggressive legal letters, and by the beginning of September, all the businesses were in administration, or probably Chapter 11, as you guys would call it over there, and I was made personally bankrupt as well. So I mean, it literally fell that fast. And on everything I had was intermingled. So when one business went, it had a knock-on effect across them all, and literally within the course of weeks, the lot was gone.
Yeah, it's crazy how fast that happened. Just hearing that right now in your story, and like you mentioned, like 2008, there was such low liquidity at that time, and so if that didn't happen, right, that 2008 section stuff didn't happen, where everything was really crashing in the real estate space, and obviously that carried over into other sectors as well. Do you think you still would be in like the strip club industry today and still building that empire over there?
Well, I mean, there's probably a few different answers or ways to take that question. Really, I mean, look, if you talk about the strip club industry itself, as time went on to kind of 2009, 10, 11, the legalities of that industry changed a lot, which put a lot of pressure on the earning potential. So today it is not the same business. It's not the same level of profitability as it was back then. So maybe I'd have changed anyway. But I think probably a more interesting question would be along the lines of, if the credit crunch hadn't started, then how long would I still be going on for? But the reality is that business was bust long before 2008. It was still alive in 2008 purely because people were continuing to lend money to me. They were stupid enough to lend. I was stupid enough to keep borrowing. And if that had not changed for 2009, 2010, 11, we would have kept going on and on and on, and the businesses would still have existed. And they would have still looked probably profitable on paper, but the reality was, they would just be getting drowned in more and more and more debt. And the reason I say that's a more interesting question is because, to me, ultimately, that's where the economy is at right now. I mean, if you go back to pre-COVID, so I don't know, 2018, 2019, I mean, businesses then, there've been so many zombie businesses that shouldn't really be in existence. They weren't proper businesses. They were only existing because there'd been such an easy availability of capital in the years prior to that, so people could keep borrowing money to kid themselves and keep the businesses afloat. And we all thought that when COVID happened, that was going to be the end of all these businesses. Almost like the cull, the execution that they all really needed. And actually, the exact opposite happened. And instead of there being less money around during COVID, there was more money around. With government grants and bailouts and accessibility of loans, etc. And then we've kind of come out of the COVID period, and again everyone said, well, it's now going to tighten up, but there's still so much capital in the market, and people desperate to lend, people desperate to invest. Obviously, that's tightening up in the venture capital world now, and there's people shaky about property. But in general, there is still too much money out there and too many shit businesses. So I guess for me, the context of that story is, yes, would I still be around doing strip clubs today? No, I wouldn't. Could I have lasted longer than 2008? Absolutely. Should I have lasted longer than 2008? No. I should have. I should have gone in 2006 or 2007. And in a way, obviously it probably didn't feel like it at the time, but it was probably a great blessing to me that that it did happen then, and the learning experiences that came from it.
Yeah. Those are all really great points. And I love what you said about, COVID. I think what's going on right now in our world economy is kind of similar to what's going on in 2008. Obviously, you would know more than me because you're in that lending space, the finance space right now. But it just seems scary to me right now, right? I mean, all that stimulus money that you said came out during COVID years and prop businesses up. And now we're really seeing the inflation side of that. Obviously, that's starting to come down a little bit. But how do you kind of see the lending space changing over like the next couple of years? Like what do you think is going to happen, like the world economy with all that stuff going on? I mean, how do you see that impacting like your business going forward here?
I mean, look, we're still very, very aggressively lending. I mean, look, we're in a. I think the answer to that question will differ for different businesses depending on how they're funded, on what kinds of businesses that they're interested in. I mean, look, we're a secured lender, so we want to lend against against hard assets that we can take security over if things go wrong. I mean, look, obviously we're tightening up a bit. How we would view an asset. So instead of being at a 75% loan to value position, we might be at 70. And instead of 70, we might be at 65. But the good thing for us is we're funded purely by private investors. High net worth guys. Which means that we don't have to, deal with the whims of overnight changes of mentality and policy by banks. So if you look at a lot of our peers, they've shut up shop completely at the moment because they're all funded by the same banking institutions who, when something happens, they make a wholesale change. But we've got good availability of capital. Our investors have wanted to take money out of the stock market and the unpredictability of the stock market and put it in the more predictable asset class of secured debt, which is what we offer them. But I think, look, for me in general, no matter what's going on in the economy, there's always opportunities. It's just a matter of being careful and sensible and selective about it. So I mean, look, if we pick the right businesses, if we pick the right asset classes, and we lend against them in a sensible manner, we can make money in an up market. We can make money in a down market, and touch wood, that's what we've been doing, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, no matter what the economy is doing, up or down, there's always ways to make money in actually what's going on out there. So with that being said, obviously, like I said, you're in the lending space right now, and a lot of companies out there want to get lending, right? There's a lot of businesses that need lending in their companies as well, and they're trying to get it, and they struggle with that. So from your perspective, like, what are you looking at when you're evaluating a company? What are some main key factors you're looking at to try to get, or just to decide whether or not you want to actually lend money to them? Or do you think there's going to be a problem in the future? Like, what are some of those key factors that you look at when deciding that?
Well, look, I'm a secured lender, so what I'm always looking at. What is my fallback position if things go wrong? What assets can I take security over, so that if we don't get paid and things don't go to plan, how can I make sure that we protect our capital and we protect our investors' money? Now, other than that, I say that we're a secured lender, but we're not a pawnbroker, so we don't want assets to be taken away. We don't want things to go wrong. We really do want the underlying business to perform. So we will want to look for good businesses, that have got, a good business plan run by a solid management team, with some kind of track record, track history, predictable income, and some kind of clear plan in place of how we think they're going to pay us back. Now, look, that's down to me. Or that's the way we operate as a business. I think my advice to anyone raising money would be two sides really. One, if you absolutely have to go and raise finance, then you need to go into it very, very prepared. I mean, look, raising money is a business activity or a task in and of itself. You need to be presenting your plan, presenting your numbers, presenting your personal circumstances, and being able to answer very clear and granular questions on those numbers. I mean, look, some of my biggest criticisms of business owners that I deal with is they've got no grasp of their numbers whatsoever, because they either pass it off to an accountant, or they just they either don't understand it or don't think they need to understand it. So I think a couple of big pieces of advice. One is make sure you know your numbers, and even if you do have an accountant who deals with it, whether that's one that works for you or whether that's an external one that works on a part-time basis, really get to grips with how the accountancy works. Secondly, don't underestimate the importance of your personal credit in a business loan. I mean, it's something that I think a lot of business owners are quite naive to. They'll always say, well, why does this is a strong business, and that the business can pay the money, but why do you need to look at my personal credit? What we like to look at with personal credit, or what other lenders like to look at, is it's not necessarily how much money you have or haven't got, but how you behave as an individual. I mean, I would always much rather look at somebody and say that, okay, they've got a huge, I don't know, £100,000 one-off debt, or they've had £1 million bankruptcy as an isolated event that's moved on. Then I look at somebody who's got 50 credit cards, and they've got and they're always bouncing payments for £10 here or $20 there, and just really showing that they're very disorganized as an individual. So that's and that's why lenders like to look at personal credit, and I think that's a big mistake that people make. But I think what you should also really think about is do you even need to borrow the money? And I think particularly in today's economy, where it is getting tougher to borrow the money. And okay, if you've got assets that you can use as security, that's one thing. But if you haven't got the assets, it's going to be very tough to borrow the money. But so often, particularly when it comes to people setting up a business or businesses in their early stages, people want money for things that they just don't need. They're trying to employ staff before they need them. They're trying to take on fancy offices. They're trying to run before they can walk. I guess really ask yourself, do you need the money? Is there a way that you can bootstrap it? Is there a way you can guerrilla finance it? Can you get customers to pay up front? Can you get suppliers to extend your credit? There's more than one there's more than one way to skin a cat. And like I said, raising money is a full-time job in itself, but the most creative people will be the ones who survive.
Yeah, that's a lot of really great information right there. I never really thought about the personal credit side of things, right, for business, but I guess that makes sense, right? You want to make sure they're a responsible person when it comes to actually loaning them money. So I'm glad you brought that up. So with that being said, as we close out this interview today, I just have one more question for you. I appreciate you hopping on here. I know our guest got a lot of great information and value out of today. So that last question is, so going forward for you, how can people actually reach out to you and find you? And is there anything else that you'd like to say?
Look, you can find me on all things social. You can find me all over the internet. I am certainly not hiding. Look, I'm on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, the works. I'm at the Matt Haycox. That's TheMattHaycox on all things social. I've got a website, which is matt-haycox.com. I've got a podcast, which is the Matt Haycox Show. Recently launched a newsletter as well, and I make a lot of content about business, about sales, about marketing, about finance, about overcoming bankruptcy, failure, and everything in between, really. So give me a follow, subscribe to the newsletter. If you've got any questions, please do kind of DM me on any of those channels, because I do answer as many questions as I can. If not directly, I'll make videos about it. And always love to hear from people, and always like to know that I can help.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, definitely take advantage of that. And Matt Haycox, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Will.
Nowhere that we go is a one-way street. Nothing